Hello. So, after watching the video Food Evolution, there was quite a bit that I learned. Some of the different points of view included American consumers who were really worried about some of the genetically modified food going or products going into their food. There were also so many different sides that it was really difficult for American consumers to really understand which point they might take. Anti-GMO groups and advocates were worried that there are chemicals being used to create the genetically modified foods, which are dangerous to the consumers in the end. Pro-GMO groups and advocates were really for GMOs because they felt that they were a great way to save potential crops and save and have healthy food for people. Industrial scale farmers like papaya farmers were actually very worried to get rid of GMOs because GMOs helped save some of their harvests from disease and other things such as drought. And they were worried that that would then eliminate many jobs and sources of income for people, especially those in some of the third world countries. Industrial scale farmers, organic and small scale farmers were also kind of on that same side, that they were worried that not having GMO foods would not allow them an ability to rid their foods of diseases, so they wouldn't have an ability to have crops. There were clean crops that they were eating, but that they were genetically modified through genetics and not through chemicals. Agricultural biotech companies such as Monsanto were also stating that their products are genetically modified through growth programs and not through chemicals necessarily. They felt that by incorporating GMO foods, they could also take away really more harmful pesticide usage because they could put pesticides into the genetically modified versions, so smaller scale, less dangerous. And then scientists were also on that same page that there's ways to do this to kind of save options and have healthier options without having all the bad things that people were suggesting, as far as like changes in physical bodies such as autism or other such examples. Some pros of it was that GM foods can genetically alter the structure physically of plants so that it could be resistant to various crops or droughts. It also was a pro because it could prolong the life of crops and the livelihood of farmers. Additionally, a third benefit is that they could actually put some of the pesticides into the genetically modified foods as a way to prevent the use of widespread pesticides in the long term. Some cons is that if they're using pesticides anyways, that would become into our food system. And then another con of genetically modified foods is that they are altered, and that once they're gone, it was harder to bring that back. And finally, a third con is that once the foods are genetically modified, such as the bananas or the papayas that we referred to, it was really difficult to bring like original foods back because they aren't resistant to drought, they aren't resistant to disease. This video was very, very intriguing to me because this is something that I don't know a lot about. But one of the things that I found really intriguing is that a lot of things are already genetically modified, such as insulin, cheese, and various things like that you use kind of more daily than you would think. They brought up the idea of vaccinating a plant through implanting some of those antibodies essentially into the plant, so kind of like we're talking about with our bodies. I also thought it was really interesting that a lot of the points that they made was that there is no real scientific data adverse to genetically modified foods. That was really interesting to me. And I wondered maybe that if they were labeled as genetically modified foods, whether that's chemically or physically altered, then maybe customers could have a preference of choice. Like when they went to the markets, they could choose, like if they're for GMOs or against it, they'd have like more of a clear, transparent understanding of what they're ingesting. Because I think some of the problems came up with the fact that people didn't really know what it did. And so I thought maybe that would be a great way to give them choice. I do think that GMOs should be labeled But as a person who's very conscientious of what I eat, I think it should be like that anyway, so that people have an understanding of what they're ingesting fully. Um, and then I do like that they were more environmentally conscious with GMOs and some of the discussion that they had. So I think after evaluating my answers, I'm still a little on the fence because, again, I'm very conscientious of what I put in my body. But if they were labeled in such a way that I could see these are genetically grown, not chemically altered, I would be much more understanding of that, and I'd probably want to do more research. But I do think I would be more open to it as opposed to just having GMO. It's a very broad term that I think needs a lot more education out in the environment. So that's my thoughts.